We take a look at the Nigerian stock market, stories coming out of Morocco, look at the global markets, and Mozambique as well as Uganda under the spotlight. And to navigate us through the various countries on the African continent this evening, we're joined by Zwelakhe Mnguni, Chief Investment Officer and co-founder of Benguela Global Fund Managers. Good to have you with us once again as we focus on currency movements, on equity performance, as well as debt issuance and, of course, regional banking activity. Welcome, Mr. Mnguni.
Hi, Thami. Good evening to your viewers.
So perhaps let's start off by taking a look at Uganda's currency. It really is under a bit of pressure right now. What is behind that?
Yeah, certainly, I think the currency is has weakened. There's two reasons primarily. I think the tourism has dried up partly due to the Ebola outbreak on the continent. And tourism is a major FX earner for Uganda. The second thing is that they are importers, or they net importers of fuel or and crude. So the high price of crude as a result of the situation in the Middle East has actually affected their foreign exchange balance of payment. So that has created weakness on the currency, and that's really the main situation that got us there.
And it looks like, as far as Nigeria's stock market is concerned, they are continuing their upward trend.
Yeah, I think there's two elements that are driving that. On one side, I mean, Nigeria has always been very strong on the oil market, oil and gas sector. And I think in the past, the weakness was that they used to export crude products or energy products and import fuel. And since the establishment of Dangote as a refinery within the Nigerian continent, the Nigerian country, they are actually able to export some of the refined products out of crude. And that has been very beneficial to their currency on one side. But also, we've seen that the banks are actually quite actively participating in deals now. There's a lot of corporate action that's happening in Nigeria. And therefore, there is strong performance that's come through from the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, but also from the banking sector. The other sectors are feeding off the same strength, but to a lesser extent. But the two main sectors that have been driving Nigerian market performance has been the oil and gas and the banking sector.
And just really bearing testament to the reports that are coming out in the performance of the stock market. I mean, just today we were, focusing on Ethiopia's first foreign-owned, investment license that they've issued to a Nigerian bank. It was perhaps about a week or two ago, with the Nigerian president was also highlighting the rather strong performance of the Nigerian economy, and Dangote's plant having actually exceeded its maximum as far as how much it can produce per day, the number of barrels. So really a good story coming out of Nigeria economically.
Yeah, it's certainly a very good story, and I think we would never understand how big the impact this was to the Nigerian economy, because there were shortages of fuel that have now been resolved to a large extent. There were currency issues. They didn't have enough currency because they always had to prioritize buying fuel back. And those things have been resolved, and it's a private sector business that has actually bailed out the economy. And I think it's a fantastic story. And I think Nigeria would probably continue to see stronger and stronger performance from here on.
Right. So let's move on to Morocco's OCP group. They major in phosphate, fertilizer, state-owned company, quite a giant on the continent. They're seeking to raise up to $541 million. Tell us why and what for.
Look, I think they are one of the biggest owners of reserves, the biggest phosphate reserves in the world. So they are looking to increase their production of fertilizers and feed, or the wash plants, the green energy. So they try to spend capital around the improvement of productivity, but also making it a bit more green in that regard. And one of the things that has benefited them is that the fertilizer market has become tight as a result of the Middle East. We know that the plant in Qatar was hit, and the fertilizer market has been shaky since then. The prices have gone up, and that has meant that those that are outside the Middle East can actually participate in that market quite profitably. So they try to take advantage of that by raising capital to expand their production.
And taking a look now at the global markets and how the recent trade data coming out of China, as well as the ongoing geopolitical tensions involving Iran, are actually impacting the global markets. Could you take us through that?
Yeah, look, I think what we're seeing is that the global markets continue to rally, especially if you try and separate the regions. I think from a market perspective, I think the US continues to lead, driven by semiconductors. South Korea has continued to perform because of the shortage of memories in the semiconductor space. They dominate the memory space. But also you are seeing that fundamentally in China, there is a very strong performance. We saw the export data coming through, the trade data coming through, and the exports were surprised on the upside. And the imports were significant as well, but the exports surprised on the upside. It looks like their EV exports are going gangbusters. They are trade with the US on semiconductors and the chips seems to be going very well as well. So the US was also importing a lot of stuff from them, so the batteries and solar products. So that has been quite a positive fundamental improvement, because I think the last numbers did disappoint on the manufacturing side. So this is a positive story.
And just to wrap up, we see FDH Bank acquiring a controlling stake in EcoBank Mozambique, part of their larger strategy to expand in that region.
Yeah, I think it's actually EcoBank exiting that the Mozambican market, and I think it's primarily because EcoBank has been transitioning more towards a consumer bank, and not just only a commercially focused bank and investment banking. And I think deals in Mozambique at the moment are actually more on the commercial investment banking, and FDH has taken advantage of that primarily because of proximity, but also because they are continuing to build a franchise that is very strong, both at home in Malawi, but also now entering the Mozambican market. So I think it's a fantastic deal. It does mean that there's going to be a bit more competition for the likes of Standard Bank, Absa, that operate on the continent, that these deals will become a bit more competed for. I think the benefit that our South African banks have is that their cost of capital is relatively better than the rest of the continent banks. Therefore, they would be able to maybe price a bit more aggressively in that regard.
Mr. Zwelakhe Mnguni, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking us through some of the leading performances on the African market. Thank you for your time.